Well, now that we're doing the video podcast, I don't even really do like my formal intro anymore, but this is Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. We have Greg Lowder on today. We've been talking about this for a long time, and Greg came on the Best Made Weddings podcast that we did, talking about, kind of COVID weddings, which then, of course, like immediately afterward, everything closed down, and that was a wonderful discussion. But obviously, there'll still be tidbits there, kind of once we ease back into openness. But I reached out to Greg because, I've tried to have him on before. We've met plenty of times at weddings and events and everything else, and especially right now, with everything just kind of dead for certain vendors and everything else, I'm trying to just get let's talk to some DJs. Let's find, people that maybe aren't, just because of everything going on, and get people on and voices and stuff. So thank you so much for coming on today on Labor Day. We're doing this, and I appreciate that. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Thanks very much, Reed. My name is Greg Lowder with Affairs to Remember Entertainment, and I am a wedding DJ. And it's funny, I was just thinking that, when people ask you what you do for a living, it's like, I literally made a decision 10, 15 years ago. I'm a wedding DJ. And it was kind of a joke. There's even been some good Saturday Night Live skits about it and things like that. But I'm really I'm proud of it. And overall, I do other stuff. But 85% of my business the last 15 years has been weddings. And I really wouldn't do it any other way. It's kind of my life.
So the first question I got to ask, and Dorothy's even asked this too to me, because we're kind of catty corner from each other at the wedding show for years, and now we moved to the other side this year now. Greg Lowder, that as a wedding DJ, that's a great name. Was that planned?
No, that's my name. If you can thank Joe and Sandy for that name. Well, I guess Joe's technically my dad, but no, it's funny. I've never used it for anything. When I started the company, I started with a business partner, and he's a good friend and everything. And so we named the company after the Cary Grant movie, An Affair to Remember. And so, matter of fact, we used to give out the movie to people when they booked with us. So, but I just had never have. And when he moved on, 15 years ago or so, I thought about maybe rebranding and using it. But the one thing, it implies loudness, and a lot of DJs, in my opinion, are too loud. I mean, you got to stand in front of the speakers. Behind the speakers, it sounds bad because, it's not the way they're aimed. But in front of the speakers, do you ever wear earplugs or headphones?
Yeah, I carry a bag of them now. We had it was like a Nigerian wedding last year, and they had brought in someone that, had done a lot of kind of that type of wedding. And we were at Block 41. And so if you ever go there, there's like the downstairs and then there's the upstairs. And so the ceremony was downstairs, and he didn't have a second setup. So I'm sitting there and I'm talking with him and the planner and everything. And I go, hey, so toast upstairs, like, how are we doing that? And he's like, well, I don't have, he doesn't, it's all downstairs. But his speakers were so loud that it would just like echo through the building.
Because that open part, yeah.
And so we were sitting downstairs eating, and he was playing music. And Chelsea, my secondary, she goes, I'm going to need to go outside and walk around because it was so loud in there, and it had just been echoing in our ear for like 4 hours. I'm like, we need to get out of here. Yeah, so too loud is not a good thing.
So funny enough, I actually heard about that wedding from the planner. So same sort of reason it was that way. Yeah, I carry him too. And it's not a knock. The one thing about it and is DJs like it loud, and I have gone to a lot of events. You and I both do some of these industry events that we get to go to and stuff like that. And even at those ones, I mean, there's a conscious decision to see how loud the music should be. And there's to me, as a DJ, one part of your job is to read the crowd, and that's not how well the song is. It's part of it is how well the song is working, but also whether people can have that conversation. The last 10, 15 years as people's attention spans have gotten a little bit less and shorter and things like that. They'll run out to the dance floor, their favorite song. They'll be excited about it. And then in the middle of the song, they'll slow down and have a conversation with somebody. And there is no reason they have to put up their hands to someone else's ear and talk like that. I mean, you have to be able to observe those things. The wedding, now, you're working a club, you're doing a school dance, maybe that's something different. But at a wedding, it's just too loud, and my ears shouldn't bleed. Here's funny. First event I ever did, first 25 events I ever did were weddings. And that's how I got in doing this, which is interesting. And the first one we ever did that wasn't was a high school reunion, a 30th high school reunion. I wasn't even 30 then, so it was kind of funny. And we go and we meet they have like the committee that's working on the high school reunion. So my partner Scott and I go down into their office in downtown Edmonds, and the guy who was on the committee happened to be an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And on his desk is literally that plastic thing of an ear with the piece, that you can pull out. We got a 15-minute lesson. He must have just come to an event or something, but he explained to us how an ear works and how you can do damage, and literally felt like it was his duty to, help these two young kids learn how not to blow people's ears out at an event. And it's one of those things that's just stuck with me, because what your ear will do is it'll slowly close up over time with music. So what is loud, at a 7 early in the night will be, sound a lot less than that later in the night, because your ears is closed up. It's why when people get hearing damage, it's the jackhammer, it's the jet engine, it's the, that all of a sudden sort of sound. So, it's just one of those things, you don't want to be too quiet, but you also want to have headroom about be able to turn it up as the night goes on. A, just to add to the excitement, but B, because people's ears now perceive the music as being softer.
Yeah, when I was working down in Bakersfield in news, there was I think it was called like the Rockstar Energy Bar, because it was and it was exactly what you would think of like a bar, like a hard rock bar would be in Bakersfield, California, back like 10 years ago. And yeah, you would walk in there and like all you would see is like, people's heads together, screaming in each other's ears, trying to talk. And I'm like, this is a bar, you want to go to a concert. Okay. I've seen Judas Priest. I've seen whoever, it's one thing you're going to a concert. Okay. Well, but it's like, we're just trying to sit and like chat. I mean, this isn't even, and like at a wedding, it's that mix of, wanting people to be able to kind of congregate and socialize and then also dance,
Front row Van Halen. I was 18, couldn't hear for 3 days afterwards. In the pit, Eddie Van Halen sitting right in front of me doing his guitar solo, but you can't hear for 3 days. And so it's something you have to be conscious of it. Now, is it a huge problem? I don't think so. I think people are aware of it. We've got so many of these barn venues nowadays and other ones where there's neighbors. But I will tell you, I'm actually am on the list, the referral list for 3 different venues in the area, just because I'm respectful with the volume. And they've had to, they're ones that have exclusive, you can only pick from our DJs. And I think part of that's just not being a jerk. And part of it is just, just because your speaker can go to, what's the old saying? Just because it goes to 11, you don't need to turn it to 11. Yeah. I mean, so.
So what inspired you? Because you've been doing this a long time, seeing tons of stuff. I don't even know, like what made you, how did you get involved in all this?
Well, back to Scott. So when he and I were friends, we met working at an A&W in high school, and we went to the same high school, and he's a year older and just we're roommates and friends and then he got married pretty young and he started working for the DJ company that DJ'd his wedding. And, about 6 months into it or so, he was kind of like, I was working at Nintendo at the time and playing video games, which was great. And he said, this is something I think we could do, because we knew we wanted to do something. And I literally think he said, quote, then we won't be having to work for the man. So, and so we kind of like, I went on a couple of his events for him or with him and we kind of put it together. And be honest, from their business model, we kind of learned all the things we didn't want to do. They were kind of a big company, and I don't even think they're around anymore, but it was kind of like we wanted to do, because both of us, I was doing video games and also customer service at Nintendo. He worked at a hotel, which is all about customer service. And so we literally started the company, built around, kind of serving our customers and more on a personal level than just a quantity and how many can we do sort of thing. And literally I just did wedding 1,243, which is crazy. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. But it's funny is somebody asked me the other day is one of the questions the groom asked me on an interview. We were on a Zoom call just like this. And he said, well, how many have you done? And I told him the number, and he's like, well, wow. I mean, he said, doesn't it get old or anything like that? And the coolest part is it doesn't. And it's my passion. It's what I'm good at. Pretty much the only two jobs I've been good at in my life is playing video games and doing this. Had a lot of other ones, but because every week it's different. Will you play the same song? Sure. Sometimes, you will. There's some songs that work and don't work. But I never introduce people the same way. You never play the same music for the ceremony. You never, I've even been at the same venue 2 days in a row, and had it been such polar opposite of weddings, and even had the playlist be very similar, but still they were still so much on the opposite end of things. I remember I was at the Dome Room 2 nights in a row, same couple or same venue, 2 different couples. One was very formal. It was like you're all in, full on black tie. Everybody's Mr. and Mrs. I mean, I literally called the parents Mr. and Mrs. during introductions, all super classical music. And the next night was rock and country. And the funny part is probably 20-30% of the dance music exactly the same, but it couldn't be 2 formal events. And then the staff at the end of the night, matter of fact, we're still friends, because they were like, I can't believe you just did those 2 weddings, because they were all there for both. And I like that. I like the difference.
No, I mean, it's like in just the couples, and especially, the DJ, you're talking with the other family members and the guests and stuff. I mean, there's just so much else that goes into it. Yeah. Than just like hitting the playlist or whatever. I mean, it's crazy how, just different couples can be, and how different, weddings. And like you said, even doing the same, I mean, we've had, rest in peace, Monte Cristo. I remember we had, it was a great place for us in terms of, I liked the aesthetic. Some people didn't, but I said, like, it always delivers there. Like our good friends got married there. We've had probably 6 or 8 weddings there. I said, it always delivers. And then one day I was working with this photographer, and it was like one of the worst weddings we've ever done. And I was like, I don't know what it was, but it's also different, right? Where you could do the same thing. Like you said, you could be at a place 3 nights in a row, and it could be totally different each time.
It really can. And a lot of it comes down to, and it's not me guessing the night of. I already know what it's going to be generally like getting into it. I mean, there's a little difference in the crowds. Next year is going to be a very interesting example as we kind of come out of this, and as things evolve. It's going to be very interesting to see, because at first people were like, oh my gosh, next year people are going to want to party. They're going to want it's going to be crazy. I don't think it ever goes back to the way it was. And I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not guessing, or I am guessing, but it's just, it's different and it's evolves. But the same thing can be said about how weddings have been over my career. I mean, things have evolved, things have changed. I mean, just think of how I played music. We started, it was all on tapes, a little bit of CDs, and then it went into CDs, and then, digital for, a long time now. And so it's just, as that changes, so does what couples want. When I first started doing this, generally it was moms and brides who booked me, but probably 60% were moms. That's who was walking around the wedding show. You get the phone calls, maybe go to their house, meet with them like that. And now, most of the time I'm talking, the phone calls coming from the groom. And that's cool. But see, it also, the groom is looking for something different than perhaps the mom was. And so The first question out of his mouth will probably be price. And it's an interesting, I know you did a pricing, one of these and it's an interesting question, but sometimes they're asking that question because they don't know what else to ask. And so what I'll do is turn that around and ask them, like, one of the questions, I've asked every client this for 15 years. And sometime during our initial meeting is I asked them to give me 3 words to describe how they want their reception or wedding to be for Duimbo. And it's interesting to see, there's no right or wrong answers. I certainly hope they say fun. But they don't always. But it's interesting to see what those 3 words are, because it's what's important to them. Some people struggle to come up with those words, and that's okay. But that tells me that maybe that means my planning with them, and I write down a little something when they struggle with that to remind me that as we're going through the planning process, maybe I need to be a little bit more creative with them and need to give them some ideas or things. Or if they both give me 5 words, then, or the bride gives me 2 and the groom gives me 1, or whatever the couple, everybody's personalities are a little bit different. Cool. But it kind of gives me those little hints about how that planning process. And then, we meet 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I don't limit them. So, whatever, most of the time it's 2 or 3, maybe 4. But I had a couple last year, 7 meetings. Yeah. Over 18 months, and, all in person. And so, you know what though? What do you think my best wedding of the year was?
Well, yeah, it also means that they're invested. I mean, that's also a key thing with that is, it's that tough line where you're like, well, do I really want to meet that many times? But also it means that they really care, right? And that's what you want, right? You want people to care.
They do. And it was an involved wedding. There was a lot going on. But I literally say to people, I don't limit our meetings. And they just took me at that. Now, we had dinner. We got to know each other. One was the initial meeting. And then maybe 2 or 3 big picture ones, like over a year out. And then as we kind of even skipped a few months and came into those last ones, and then even had a last minute week of the wedding, but they just were worried about stuff. And one of the things in looking back on that one through my notes in our initial conversation, they had been to a wedding the year before where the DJ trashed the night and a bunch of mistakes, said some inappropriate things, insulted some people, and there was going to be a fair amount of their guests that were at that event. And so and not only was that in the back of their head, now they trusted me, but trust but verify, isn't that what Mr. President Reagan used to say? So they just were wanting to make sure, and it also meant we had there was also just a lot of stuff going on. So it's like, one meeting was just the ceremony music, and there was a reader, and there was a cake or a candle lighting, and there was, like 6 songs instead of the normal 3 or 4. So it's cool. It made him happy.
That's the thing, and people don't get is how much pre-prep, DJs do. And, I know that like with video and photo, it's a lot afterward. And I do think photographers do a lot more I don't know. I'm at the point, if they want to meet, but like, we could have 18 meetings, but then if I show up day of and it's different, like at least for a DJ, like you're controlling a little bit more of like what's happening. But like, if we have meetings about, okay, well, this is going to happen, and then we show up and it's all out the window, like it doesn't. So it's tough. It's tough to kind of where you're definitely a little bit more like in the captain's chair for like directing some of that stuff that they want to see happen. If I show up and the ceremony's flipped a totally different way, it didn't matter what we talked about the day before. It's just tough.
Part of it's just knowing where your role is for me, because about half my weddings will be with a qualified coordinator. And I say that in Aunt Susie isn't necessarily always a qualified coordinator, right? But when I did a wedding at the Woodmark probably 15 years ago. And it was with a friend was the coordinator, and she came in. I never even knew about her, even though I talked to them. They never mentioned her. She shows up and says, "Hey, I'm the coordinator." And I kind of had an attitude. And she just killed me with kindness. And I decided about halfway through the night, she kind of showed me she didn't go and hit the wine by the, she had one glass and didn't hit the second or third glass of wine. And she just kind of just proved herself that she knew what she was doing. And I kind of just on the way home from that, I was like, you know what? From now on, when I get those ones, I'm just going to make them the star. And because if you do it right and you're collaborative, and what I learned from that, because I always would do that with a real coordinator. Of course, it's that sort of thing. And as long as they're not popping in, the worst is when they pop in the day of or the week of or whatever it might be, and then they're like, look, it's it's the schedule I've written with the bride and groom. And then they're like, trying to say, oh, it says here 7:00 for the toast, and I'm like, yeah, but they're done eating. And the staff has already pulled the champagne, or poured it and stuff. But it's just about being a team player. When we got a great coordinator, then my role isn't to sit there and write the schedule. My role is to, work on the soundtrack. And I worked with most of them before. And so when you have a great coordinator, I know how they generally want to run things. And then to me, a great coordinator is organized, good communication, and then collaborative. And I'm sure you work with some of the same ones I do. Or I know you do. And it's like when you get somebody who's like, hey, and I'm sure for you, it's like a photographer. It's like, hey, how can we go and shoot this? It's like, it's like a ballet. You guys are like dancing behind each other and, staying out of each other's shots, but getting the perfect sunset pictures. It's like, and then I'm behind you guys watching that ballet going. But a good coordinator will put everybody put their head together, or you've worked with them enough, you just get that little head nod, and you don't have to go find the dad for the father-daughter dance, or you don't have to, worry about whether Aunt Susie's in the room when they cut the cake, because, I'll know who parents are and I'll know who siblings and wedding party, but I might not know who Aunt Susie is, but the coordinator will, and so those are good. When it's the friend thing, a lot of that comes down to, and this is a question I ask my couples about a lot of stuff, is in our planning stuff, I ask why a lot and constantly, actually. And it's not to challenge them about anything. If they want me to play the worst song in the history of songs, I'll play it. I don't even know what that song is, but I'll play it. I did a blog post for a wedding actually a year ago right now. And a couple of the requests were Lonely Island songs, unedited. And sure, I don't care. When else am I going to play them? It was great. And they worked really well. And they were totally inappropriate, but completely appropriate for them. But you know what? What do you think the highlight songs among them for the night were? And that's cool. And so when we were planning that, this couple happened to be live on the East Coast. I asked them why. And so I got this great story about, the groom in college and his friends and the ones that were going to be there. And so we came up with a signal, make sure that I'm playing it. It's not one you want to just put randomly at some point in the night. And if you can think of those things from Saturday Night Live with the Lonely Islands, they always got these big epic intros, and it's so you want to, figure this stuff out and where to place it. And you're not going to be able to guess that at a time. But I think why is a really powerful question, because you come up with those, what their motivation is. And in that particular couple with all the meetings, their motivation was that it was fear. And that's why they wanted to have the meetings and get the planning. And you know what? That's okay. They didn't probably know that to begin with, but we all learned it as we went through the process. So
when you talk about the worst songs, when we were planning and Dorothy wanted to do Return of the Mac as we recessed down the aisle.
Oh, cool.
And we didn't, but I was like, I was trying to explain to her, like, I understand you like this song, but like, it might be a better like general dancing song than like the first thing that's played as we like recess as husband and wife. Like maybe we could do something a little more like positive and lovey-dovey and stuff. And so that would be in that category, I think, of like, inappropriate or bad songs to play.
I just said yes. I've never played that one. So I played a lot of you remember, like, I don't know, 10 years ago where every other song on the radio was a Black Eyed Peas song?
Yes.
So
Yes.
every Black Eyed Peas song is the perfect recessional song. And so you want that, I played Jump by Van Halen there. You've had, Hall & Oates, of course, Dream but sometimes you got to find the right place to cue it up. Now, Return of the Mac, it's interesting if you talk to people is what version of that song, because the radio version really isn't as particularly danceable. And so there's a bunch of different ones. And then where do you start? Because there's an intro to that song too. And it's about the same time would it be, Regulators, and if you listen to the beginning of that one, right? So I had to go and make my own edit of that song and of Return of the Mac for some event. I don't remember what it was, but I know I have like a weird, intro to Return of the Mac. So
Dorothy just wanted to do that's all she wanted. It wasn't really anything else. It was just
she's got her flowers in one hand and you in the other.
I know.
Yeah. It'd be a good intro into it's a little slow, but because it's about 95 beats a minute, probably. It's a little slow for an intro song, but if it's one you loved, if she didn't have her flowers in her hand, there's a great question.
Yeah. Think about it. Yeah.
I ask why. You goes that, maybe you shoot it down for the recession. We're like, okay, where else can we centerpiece it? Sure, we can play it for dancing later. So then I go, okay, well, what about for your intro song? Okay, cool. And then maybe at some point she shows the clapping or you do. Well, now my head goes, okay, well, what about your flowers? So in that case, either she leaves them outside or I come and get them first and put them on the table. But that's come up. I mean, that's the thing is, what is the whole motivation that people want to do? And when you find out that it's that she wants to come in and clap, okay, let's work backwards and figure out how to make that happen.
It was funny. You were talking about kind of attitudes and stuff with the planner. We had a wedding at the Woodmark too, in fact. And I can't, we were running and family photos ran late. And I had sent my assistant, I had to get the ceremony. And so I'm running over, and I'm trying to get a wide shot, and this guy sitting there fiddling with his phone, trying to take photos of whatever. And I'm like, dude, I need you to get can you get out of the way? I gotta get this shot. And it was the DJ, right? And I was like, oh my God, I feel like such an ass, because then of course 30 seconds later, I gotta walk over and be like, hey, so for a backup for the ceremony, do you think I could get a feed out from you? Which we, appreciate, right? And so that again, to me, you said, where you kind of learn, and I'm like, yeah, man, I really can't be a jerk. And of course, Jeff, my assistant, was like, Reed, he already asked me if he could do that, and I said it was okay. And I'm like, so then I'm doubly the a-hole, because I ran over, and I'm like, okay, I really need to shut my mouth a lot, and not have that judgment, like you said, where you're coming in and you're like, well, this person's not going to know anything, or, oh, well, this is just someone that's in the way, so.
And you're right. And it's stuff we always have to improve and get better at. And it's one of those things that, for me, it's usually to drive home, thinking about that. On one hand, I love doing events close by the house. I'm close up by Newcastle and in downtown Bellevue and stuff. But man, when you're driving home from some event up in North or in the Snohomish or whatever, and you can turn the radio off and you're thinking, okay. And for me, it's half of it's thinking about the dance floor. You could probably name a song and I can tell you whether it's worked or not worked for me on a general basis, because I just kind of keep kind of a running math problem. I'll give you an example. Well, you said Return of the Mac. So to me, Return of the Mac and This Is How We Do It are, for whatever reason, always connected. I don't know if I think they came out about the same time. So This Is How We Do It, of all the times I've played, it's probably failed 95% of the time.
Really?
Totally.
That's funny.
I know. And the funny thing is, it's the perfect sort of beginning of the song to come out of a slow song. Think of your favorite 90s love song, or whatever. And then it's got that great intro. So you instantly know the song. So it's you almost bring the slow song comes down. And then right when it's there, you go, this is, so everybody's like, whoa, and by not working, people will come out to it, but it's almost like newer songs now where people listen to a minute of it and then they're kind of done. It's like TikTok sort of thing. And that song, for whatever reason, it hasn't turned people away, but it just hasn't been the success that you think it would be, or that I would think it would be. And I don't know why. I've tried it all different points of the night. And so now I say that sometimes on occasion to a client that happens to say they like that type of music. And then they're like, okay, now it's a challenge. So we got to find the perfect spot.
Well, part of that too is people just don't know that whole song. Like everyone knows the whole like first verse, whatever, and then
That's true.
then you just don't, like, everyone kind of trails out. Like it just depends.
So that's a good thing. So maybe next time I'll try the intro, the first verse, and the first chorus, and then get out of it.
Get out.
And try to just play the first minute of it. It doesn't go weird though. But maybe it goes repetitive. I've never thought about it that way.
Well, it's just sometimes just if people think they know the song. Like, have you ever had that? Like, have you ever had like, God, what song was it? And we had to do, when I studied in Italy, they did karaoke all the time. And so I think it was Shakira, Hips Don't Lie. And like, we thought, oh, we know this song. Cause there was only like 4 guys. We're like, we know this song. And like, you get up there and you're like, no, we know about 15% of the song. And then the rest of it, so it's, it's one of those you think you know more of than you do until you're like put on the spot.
The chorus and the Wyclef Jean part.
Yeah.
Shakira. So I like that song. That's a good song. The remix is I think she has a straight album version, but I don't know if I've ever played it where it's no Wyclef. It's just her.
Oh, I don't know.
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see with that. And, it's just about that level of personalization and just figuring it out with them. And, sometimes you will get clients who want, like some crazy, all the remix stuff, but anything released in the last 5-10 years, there might be 20 different legit remixes and then another 50 on YouTube that are people do at home just for fun. And you get almost, of course you get to the point where it's almost unrecognizable. I got a buddy who does remixing for has like fairly well known and does a bunch of those. And sometimes his stuff is just so out there. It's like, I like it, but I can't play that at a wedding necessarily because people won't even recognize the song. I could stick it in between stuff or play a minute of it, but if they're not going to know it.
No, you need that familiarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. I hate is when they go and like, if you're like where they don't play, like if they're only playing like parts of songs and you're like, oh man, like I want to hear, like if it's a good song, it's that tough balance of like keeping it moving versus like people want to hear, the chorus like once or twice.
That's a great point. And unless the clients have asked for it or it's your specialty as a DJ, I'll just say it, 90% of the time, there's certain songs that you just should play the regular version. And again, if you're that kind of guy and you're kind of remix or if the couple is really into it, that's cool. But, let's go to classics, Journey, Don't Stop Believing, AC/DC. There's no reason to play remixes of those songs. Unless you're doing like a big, long mega mix, and I'll qualify it a little bit. But if you're doing a typical wedding with people from 8 to 80 and people are into like a little bit, a variety of music, there's just certain songs that people want to hear that classic. Now, it might be at this point, those songs are for their parents, and that's fine. It would have been like, old time rock and roll and what disco would have been, 10 years ago, or, we've progressed, and that's good. But there's certain songs, it'd be interesting to think, well, okay, what today are songs that some DJ, 10 years from now is going to put a remix on and ruin the song, quote unquote, make it unrecognizable.
Uptown Funk.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Or the Justin Timberlake dance, Can't Fight the Feeling.
Yeah, that one. Or Sexy Back, which had some good remixes. But so I'll give you my music argument. Sexy Back, so now it's 12 years ago.
God, that makes you feel old.
Yeah. Well, yeah, by Usher's 10. But that started this kind of where we're at with dance music today, and really ended about 2 years ago.
So it ended. Qualify that again. Wait, what was 10 years ago?
Well, so Sexy Back was if you take a line of really good dance music, it started with Sexy Back, and I have to look up what year it was, but as I recollect, it's about 12 years ago. If you take that up until pretty much Despacito. That kind of ended it. Maybe you could go last summer and oh shoot, what's his name? The Ride the Horse dude.
Oh yeah, 2006. So 14 years ago.
Okay, 14. So start there. Thank you, and then goes up to Little Nas.
Yes.
Last summer.
Yeah.
And those are your bookends, and really kind of ended about 2 years ago. I mean, if you really take that 14 years, so take 12 of those years up until 2 years ago, you could look on the charts and pull off, let me work backwards and I'll tell you how I get to this point. I always, at the end of the year, take all the music from that previous year and look at it and evaluate it and kind of, and the way I have it organized, kind of move it to a new category. And I look at this and say, okay, 7, 8 years from now, when people are getting married, who is going to be necessarily requesting this song for their weddings? And so, and that's also thinking that 10 years ago, people were really looking for music from like their high school and college age. Nowadays, people are into a lot of newer music, that even though they're older, so they might be 30 and into current music, and that's good. But you kind of look at and say, okay, last year, how many songs? Well, 5 years ago, I might have been pulling 10, 20, 30, 40 songs and looking at those and going, okay, these are songs that are going to stand the test of time. Maybe there's 10 of those that are exceptional songs across all categories. Rock, well, not much rock, but country and dance, but mainly dance stuff. Last year, I think I took 4 songs. This year, I mean, can you name too many decent songs that have been out this year? Couple, not too many.
Well, also there hasn't been, I mean, we haven't had a lot of weddings to go to.
This has been, but you'd think, a lot of people delayed their albums this year, but heck, what else are people doing but sitting at home listening to music? So it might have been a good year to release music and, but we don't have that necessarily song of the summer. No. And nobody's, it's this year. So count this year as the exception. But even if you go back to last year, 3, 4, or 5 songs I'd pull out of that one. And in other years, I'd be pulling 20 songs off that list going, these are songs that are going to stand the test of the time. And so, that's just me. And it's not really, it's partially my opinion, but it's also things like my clients just aren't asking for that stuff. So if they're asking for stuff for 10 years ago.
But where you're saying that if it ended, so now what are we in now? Just in kind of a dull period? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I just think we're in, and mainly it started to trend downward 5, 6 years ago. It's just music being like good music, but not necessarily danceable music.
Yeah.
So where normal years you'd pull 30 songs out that you think people will be dancing to 10 years from now. Now we're 20 and 10 and 5 and just. There's just not as many. And it's not a knock on anything. It just means that we're in a weird trend, other non-danceable stuff. It's beats per minute. A lot of stuff was right around that, we're talking about this is how we do it, but around that 95, 100 beats a minute. Most dance stuff's 115, 120.
It was fascinating to me. I can't remember who sent it to me. Maybe it was Adam. It sent me this like a TED Talk, and it was this guy showing how all the rhythms that there's only like so many, and where people were like, you have like the Queen, ding 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 ding, and like Vanilla Ice, but then there was like the one like John Legend stole one from, or like, but they're not stealing, but it's like it's the same. The thing. And so like the guy did the math and showed like that there was like a finite number of these like beats or like these melodies, I guess is what they called it. Right. And so like then they went through and like copyrighted all of them and then like released them to the public so that no one could sue each other over. Are you following any of this at all?
Oh, yeah.
It's a fascinating TED Talk. It's all about like it's about music copyright, but like I'm trying to even think of some of the songs they had, but like all these major ones that you think of, like that Lean on Me was like they're all repeated from other people. It's fascinating.
I haven't heard that one, but I've been following Ed Sheeran's case.
That's like one of them too. Yeah,
because he settled both of his and put them both as co-authors, basically. The sad part about his cases is both have been the heirs of the artists. The artists have passed away, And I truly believe that if the artist had still been around, there wouldn't have been a thing about it, because they would have realized what you were just talking about. But the heirs are looking for the money.
Oh, I'm trying to find. I was trying to look on the thing to see if I can find it. But anyway, the other question I wanted to ask you is, so what makes like, because I mean, I'm trying to think of like big, wedding songs in the last couple of years. I mean, obviously it's like Uptown Funk, right? And the other 24 Karat, whatever. Like, what is it that like makes that play everywhere? Is that DJs? Is that people requesting it? And like, what makes that versus, I mean, cause like, that song will be played for 100 years now, right? Where like maybe other songs. So what is it about that in your opinion, from seeing this for as many years as you have?
Mark Ronson used to be a wedding DJ.
Did he really? I could see that.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. I think that he had a line, he knew what to do. He got Bruno to sing it. It's kind of brilliant if you really think about it. And it's just, you could do the same thing. Like we talk about the Black Eyed Peas. There are just certain songs. Have you watched that? It's on NBC where they're doing the songwriter stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I feel like I saw the commercials for
it. It's kind of like The Voice, but with songwriters. Okay. And the names escape me right now. Highly recommend it. And it is like, go out of your way, because they talk about, so it's 3 songwriters, and they bring in an artist that one of them was Macklemore, which was great. And then they bring in 4 songwriters, and then they eliminate one, and then each songwriter will work with them. And I learned so much in watching that about how they do it. And some of them approach it from a technical standpoint. Like literally they went to that Berklee School of Music back in Massachusetts that is supposed to be crazy good and all that. And so you get into more of the music theory and how, and then they'll talk about stuff, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's just crazy. And about how, pop has to have this sort of lay of beat, and this has to have this. And so I think you can set up or make, if you get the right lyrics and the right voice, like the quote unquote perfect song. But I also think it's about releasing it at the right time, and really has to hit hard. I'll give you a good example. That Butterfly Kisses song, that they play for father-daughter dance. You know what I'm talking about?
I hate that song. Yeah. There's a lot of terrible father-daughter dance songs, just for the record.
So the guy who writes, it's a guy named Bob Carlisle, and he's actually a minister, and he wrote it, just never written another song before. He played some good, church music, like guitar and singing, like, and stuff. But he wrote the song for his daughter. And it's one of those ones where it got produced and got out there. Well, he twice now has come to our DJ convention in Vegas and spoke about his, about it. And one time was more about that song, and one time was a little bit more about people and the love involved in weddings and things. It was good. It wasn't preachy or anything like that. It was just him telling his story. And so when you realize like the story behind that and how it came around, sure, have we heard it 100 times and it gets, sure, old and all that, but it has this, especially now that song's been out for, 20 years, it has this deep meaning to some people that maybe listened to it when they were little kids, or maybe they danced with it. I played it. I do the father-daughter dance at one of the local clubs every year. And so I play it. I don't do it every year, but I might do it every 3rd year or something like that.
It's a terrible.
But you kind of, I see your eyes rolling. That's good.
It's so bad.
You wait till you have a kid, and then we'll talk.
I think because I hadn't done, when I started doing weddings, I did not know a lot about weddings, when I got into it. And I remember one of the first ones I did, and they played that song, and I was sitting there and I was like, what is this song? Like, cause I had no context for it at all. And I was like, it was I can't remember what they were. It was like kind of a multicultural wedding. And I was like, what is going on? Is this like special to them? Like, did they write this? Like, what is going on here?
Oh, don't get me wrong. They're cheesy, and there's some that are just way, way worse. There's one called A Song for My Son, written from a mom. But a lot of them, I remember there's one a bride sent me that her dad, because a lot of times the bride will let the dad pick out the song. And she sent it to me and said, okay, here's the song my dad wanted me to play. And I get back from an event. It's probably like 2 a.m. And I'm like, okay, I just got a minute. Let me just listen to the song. And I sit, and I'm exhausted. And, I got a baby crying next door or just about to, and all that sort of stuff. And I put on this song, and it's just got this great sort of story about a dad and his daughter. It wasn't butterfly kisses, but kind of that same sort of thing, and the next thing I know, it's like, but it hits you at that right moment. And then when I play at their wedding, I'll never forget it. I played at the wedding. I've never had a crowd. You would have loved it from an audio point. Be so quiet.
Yeah.
There, you could. I mean, literally, the old pin drop anywhere in the room. It was kind of scary. And the way we were set up, it was some venue on Woodby Island. I can't remember, some farm, but the DJ is kind of in the corner of the dance floor facing the audience. And so the dance floor is between me and the audience.
Yeah.
And so where I'm sitting, my assistant, Eric, and I are sitting there, and we're watching them. And about halfway through, now Eric was about to get married at the time, so it's kind of funny. About halfway through the song, maybe a minute into it, I nudged him. And actually, this was during the first dance, but it happened in the second one too. But I nudged him. We looked out, and I said, "Nobody is moving."
Yeah.
And not every table or chair faced the dance floor. People were literally like turning in their chairs. I mean, and it was this. And the first dance was a really powerful one too. And I just think when you pick that right song for that right moment, and hopefully it has some meaning for you and stuff. And for those of us that hear it, like. I remember listening to one of your other podcasts, you asked some DJ about what song you'd never like to play again. It's like, if I never hear Love Shack again, I'm pretty much okay with that. But yeah, but I also have headphones, so I don't really have to listen to the whole song. And so I'm working, I'm generally working, I work in the moment for the next song, but I've also kind of planned out the next half an hour or so and kind of know where I want to go. And, I can change my mind with a second to go, but, or 10 seconds maybe, but you kind of look at it and look at the crowd, and then you just kind of throw it out there. And if you can kind of put that right song at that right moment, the payoff is worth it. And the same is true with those special songs.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember back when, I guess they're still pretty around, like Weezer, but back when they had, I think when they came back with the Green album, and I went and saw them, and Rivers did some interview about how because he's like this math whiz, right? Like he's computational, whatever. And he's like, yeah, I wrote like a formula, and like it's like the perfect song or whatever. And I can use this, and I can write 500 songs a year or, whatever, right? To replicate the thing. And I was like, yeah, but I don't really think that it works that way. Like you said, it's part of it's about the timing too, and the emotion. And like you said, I mean, now you could release songs like, I know that Lady Gaga had like a new CD come out, and like Dorothy's been playing whatever the single is, like The Rain on Me or whatever single, like it's like a hammer to my head. But I'm like, but this is a great song, but we're not really experiencing it with anybody, right? Like we're not at events with it or going to see it or going, so part of it is that too, right? Where, I mean, people are sitting at home listening to music, but also like it's not as much a social thing as maybe it could be, You're
right. And the funny part is, wasn't Weezer's next album all an album of covers?
Probably.
It was Africa, right?
Oh, that was it. They ruined that, man. That was freaking brutal.
Well, here's the interesting thing about this, and it's funny in listening and thinking ahead of time what to talk to you about. Talking about music is probably would have been near the end of my list, which is interesting. When I first meet with clients, I rarely talk about music with them, and the reason is we can figure that part out. I just want to get to know them. But I find, obviously it's a big part of my life and everything like that, but it's finding the right song in the right moment, but also finding those unique ones that's good for them. And then just, I don't know, man, playing it at the right time, and then not being afraid, but also knowing the importance to it. So not being afraid to move on if it doesn't work. But knowing that it's not appropriate to do that at certain times with certain songs. And that's where the asking why comes about. You were talking about like the new album, Lady Gaga's one, and things like that. One of the things too is it'll be interesting to see if we actually have very many albums get released in the near future. And I mean, it's kind of fun for, artists to say, hey, I've got, 6 songs in the top 10 or whatever, they're all off the album. But, I remember when you get a band and they'd release a song, maybe 2 months before the album was going to come out. And then maybe one more song when the album came out, and they didn't want the songs to compete with each other.
Yeah.
I know it's different, but that was also when albums kind of told a story. Now generally, unless they tell us, it's maybe maybe 1 out of 10 albums seems to tell a story to me, and the rest are there. So you might have on the charts, most of the time there's only 3, 4 songs that are ones that people are going to really ever request. Even the best album's going to have 4 or 5. Adele's, a couple of Adele's albums, people are requesting a lot off them, but she paced them out. So that'll be interesting. It'd probably be more work for me. So now I need to listen to all the songs and figure out which ones are danceable. But I don't know. It'll be an interesting thing because, like, I subscribe to this music service and they'll send me all the songs that are released each month. Well, they do it weekly. So what do they do if somebody's new popular album has 6 songs in the top 10? Do I get all 6 at once? I don't know.
Well, that's like Dorothy does, like, it's like every, now they do. It used to be like Tuesdays they would release a new music, which is funny because like that was because of mailing the CDs right to the store, or part of it I think was because of that. Right. Now it's Friday, trying to like go into the weekend or whatever, I guess was their rationale. But like there was back in March or April, she listens to Kygo a lot. He's like a Swedish DJ, and like, yeah, he'd have a new song like every week. She's like, oh, new Kygo song, like new Kygo song, yep. And I'm like you said, yeah, it used to be, you wouldn't hear from a band for 3 years. They'd release a song, 2 minutes later there'd be an album, and then you wouldn't hear from them again for another 3 years. And yeah, like you said,
they'd be touring.
Yeah, but also I just think, yeah, like now with the immediacy of everything and everyone's attention spans and stuff, you're like, okay, we got to have, we got a new song. And then 2 weeks later, we got, it just seems like you're trying to be a lot more, you're not, it's like on like YouTube, you're not posting the video like once a month. You're trying to post like a video like every week or just to kind of keep the attention up. So,
well, biggest touring act the last couple of years, right? Taylor Swift. So, I actually took my daughter to see her at CenturyLink last year, and great show. Loved it. And we also saw Ed Sheeran the year before that and almost sat in the exact same spot. It was kind of funny. So Taylor goes. So now she's chose not to tour this year, even before COVID. She was going to do a few shows, like maybe 10 shows around the country. A couple in LA, couple in, 10 shows around the world. And that was going to be it. That was going to be her thing. She was going to open up the new football stadium in LA and then do New England and stuff. And so that obviously got canceled and everything like that. Well, now so next year probably can't start touring till summer at the earliest, early summer. And they got to, of course, you have to plan those things 6 to 9 months in advance. And now she's going to be touring off 2 albums.
Yeah.
Because she released that other album, which isn't as, there's no really big, huge hits off there as far as, danceable and stuff like that. But it's going to be interesting like that. It's not going to be traditional. It's not going to be the way it used to be. So then she has to ask herself, okay, I'm going to do a, hour, 90-minute show, maybe 2-hour show. What songs do I cut? And she's not even 30. It's like the Eagles asking, well, what songs do we not play? It's like, So I don't know. It's things are just different. It's just kind of how it is. And I think you have to recognize that. And if, as DJs, if we're still doing the same stuff we used to do, it's different. Part of that is like playing the whole song. That's a challenge. That's an interesting thing with a DJ. And it's something you have to kind of talk to your clients about a little bit and things, because some people get really mad if you get out of it, and some people, you want them to lose that attention. So it's just, again, this is that communication and just talking to people, asking why, getting into it. And I don't think it's something you can do with an app on their phone or some cool little place on your website where they fill out, can you imagine putting your entire music library up on your website and then letting people just pick songs? I mean, I know guys do that, and that's cool, but do I want a list that's got 200 songs on it?
No.
I want to know I'll play everyone. If you want to pick every song, that's cool, but let's have that conversation about it. So it's everything we've talked about, though, about all this music and everything like that. It's about that level of personalization with your clients. And if you're trying to do it the same from one week to another, it's going to drive you crazy. It's going to drive your clients are not going to get it. You're not going to get the referrals. For the wedding, the brides, she's not going to want to refer you to her friends, or her friends aren't going to want you to come to her wedding. You might have done a great job at the first wedding, but they don't want the same thing. They don't want that cookie cutter, that Mick wedding. I remember, so the gentleman who videotaped my wedding 20 years ago, we got married in 2000. Unfortunately, Bill's not with us anymore. He's a great guy, really, really cool guy. But he used the same opening video scene that he shot of a seagull flying across the sunset on the water in Edmonds, because he and I used to share a booth at the wedding show. We had double booth next to each other, and he would use the same Kenny G music and the shot of the bird flying across there. I'm sure shot onto VHS for the opening for every single video. And I just don't think you could I'd be curious to see what Bill was still doing if he was with us these days.
You mean as like the watermark kind of at the beginning,
like rolling the credits, either at the beginning or the end. Probably was at the end, but like it comes up. You're right. It was at the end because the beginning would be like some wedding music sound and saying, A Bill Productions presents, the wedding of Greg Lowder and Catherine Land, So it was just an interesting thing, but also too, it was a pain in the butt to edit back then too. So if you had a stock, I guess it's just stock footage. So anyway, maybe time to watch my wedding video again.
That'd be good. I had one more thing when you were talking about Taylor Swift and cutting songs. I was so infuriating. So we went and saw Michael Bolton back in February before kind of all this went down, and I was so excited. And I was like, we had like great seats. We were like, up at the Muckleshoot Casino, Tulalip Casino, upright. Like I'm like all locked in. And I'm like, man, like what songs is he going to play? Right. Like how does Michael Bolton cut like an 80-minute show or whatever? Like, how is that even possible? And he did like all these stupid covers of like all these old love songs. And like, he did like the hits, like, When a Man Loves a Woman and all that. But like a lot of it, like, and I know like he did like On the Dock on the Bay, like that's like one of his famous, but he's like, well, let me sing you another one about, and I'm like, can you just do anything that like, I'm like a pretty big fan. Like, can you just do like anything I would know that as a Michael Bolton fan and not like some old timey song from, 30 years ago? I don't know. It's just crazy. So
the big question though about Michael Bolton, how long was the hair?
He's short now. He's looking good. Yeah, but he came out and said, I mean, he was right next to us. Like he came out and did I don't know, they put him up on the box or something. He was singing like right in front of us. But I just was like, what is going on here? Like I was like, some of these songs, we got to move on.
I would not have picked you as a Michael Bolton fan.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, I was. Yeah. That was the XFL home opener Saturday afternoon, and then it was Michael Bolton that night, and that was a good day for Reed. That was
he does a great version of we're talking about like those typical father-daughter songs. He does my favorite version of Daddy's Little Girl, which there's an old Mills Brothers version and there's another version. I have to think of it, but it's just a little too dated. In his version, if you'd never heard the song before, you'd go, oh, that's, it might be older, but you wouldn't think that the song was, now 50 years old or 60 years old, maybe. So I like his version.
I got two questions before we go. I want to get back on the DJ thing here for a minute. So my first follow up was going to be like an hour ago, and then we got on the segue time with everything else. When you were talking about starting the company, your friend was working and all this. I have to think that like there was a pretty, not in like a bad way that you guys like lucked into it, but there had to be a low bar of like what a wedding DJ was, where you guys felt like with your experience, you're like, well, we can take this and like kind of make it right with the customer service and the care and like everything else. I mean, was that kind of your thought process? I mean, what was that? What were wedding DJs like then? And what were you guys trying to change?
Yeah, I mean, fax me your music, basically. So we had a cool advantage. So when we started the company, his mom worked at a wedding shop, a bridal shop, dresses. And so we were able to go talk to them, and they became our best referrer. And so we opened our doors with 12 events already on the books, booked as we went through there. So we had got our business license, and then 6 months later did our first events, but for 12 on. And then and so it was literally like, well, what can we do that's different? So a lot of it back then, people didn't want to meet. We always asked and offered, but they just, I remember one time at the Seattle Wedding Show, we booked 30 events at the show. We were running a special and, charging almost no money and stuff. But, people would fill out our forms. They'd mail it to us. That was back mailing out the contracts, or like I said, faxing it in. And the funny part of that, I still actually have our fax machine we used then as just kind of something to remind me, because we never got the plain paper fax. We only ever had the fax machine that had the, that slick paper. Do you know what I'm talking about? With the heat. And so it was the cheap one. And so you'd come in the office in the morning sometimes, and there'd be an entire roll of people sending us like 30 or 40 faxes stretched out across the office, as long as, whatever 30 times 11 is. Yeah. So 30 feet of it almost, and they weren't cut. So we'd have to cut them all off. But that would be your thing. God forbid if you get those things wet. And, and then it led to the online stuff, and then and doing that sort of stuff, and I think it's it's nice to have and to find some stuff and to talk to people, and like we talked a little bit about picking your music and things like that, but really it's about finding those unique and fun things that you want to do at the wedding that are unique to them, to the couple, and that could be the music like we've been talking about. It could also be the events. It could be what we do. It could also be what we don't do. Last year I talked to a couple, and in planning the wedding, when we sat down and talked, they said, here's what we don't. Remember, this is even before we met, because they would not meet with me until we had this conversation. They said, we don't want to do a first dance. We don't want to do any dancing. We don't want to cut the cake. We don't want toasts. We basically don't want it to be like a typical wedding. And I said, great. And they said, will you agree to that before we meet? And I said, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
So we sat down, and I reiterated what they said. And I said, so we're having a dinner party. And like, oh, no. It's a wedding reception. We want to have fun. We want to do these other things. I said, okay. Then what are we going to do? And they both kind of looked at each other.
Yeah.
And then I asked why. And all this, 45 minutes later, they were a same-sex couple. And so they had not grown up ever thinking that they could do these things at their wedding. And they're a little older, but not super old. Neither had done this before, and they realized, not just then, but as the planning goes, about every month or so, I'd get a call from them, and they called me by the end of this their wedding godfather, which I liked, and my role is a little different at this one, but it was good. Is they said, like a month later, they called me up and they said, hey, we decided we want to have a cake. Who do you know that makes cakes? All right, here you go. Call my friend Bonnie. And then they're like, well, we might need some flowers. All right, here's who you call, and it's like I opened up to them and said, here's what you could do. But if you don't want to, that's fine. and it was at that Stimson Green mansion. You ever been there?
Yeah.
So it's got kind of a weird entry. It's an old, big house, big mansion, but it has a door, which, and you never quite know whether, as a guest, whether to open the door or not open the door, or, what do most of us do naturally at the front, at a door? Well, you knock and nobody hears you because it's a big door. So the staff knew that and told them, you might want to have somebody there as a greeter. And so in one of our last meetings, they're like, they just told us this, what we can do. And I said, I'll be your greeter. And I put the music on, got there early, and it's kind of a little bit of stairs there in the front to load in. And I put on my suit, and literally I got to take the coat and shake hands and greet every single person that came in, because they were up getting ready. Small, real, it's a small place. Yeah. But I got to tell you, wow. But I don't think they'd ever gotten there unless we'd all met, because it was them knowing what they didn't want, which they didn't necessarily know ahead of time. And to me, that's where that comes from. And it's all about love. And that's what the whole day was about. And every wedding should be about. And I think sometimes all of us as vendors sometimes forget that, or certain vendors. I have a thing that two things that I think have come out of my brain as far as doing weddings and stuff is all music kind of goes through what my wife calls my wedding filter. And in meeting people, especially vendors, they either get weddings or they don't. I know you get weddings. I think you probably got them earlier than you think you did when you started doing this and stuff. But because a lot of people don't. I know a lot of videographers who, they're a videographer, but they also shoot weddings. Nah. And part of that is that, and I think Alan said this when you interviewed him on one of your earlier podcasts, is you get to be with people on the best day of their life. And actually, Danny said that. And how cool is that? And so and people that don't get weddings, they don't know that they don't get weddings. But it's really obvious to the rest of us, and it might not be obvious to their clients up front, but it will be on the back end. I never missed a wedding, never been late. I've been god awful sick as you can ever imagine. I'll guarantee you the couple never knew about it. Now with COVID, I don't think we can do that stuff anymore. But you got to have a really good backup plan and have other people to help you. But I just think it's about love and about understanding that this is just not another gig. It's people's lives.
Last question before you go. Favorite video game?
Fortnite right now.
Really? You play Fortnite right now?
Oh, dude, I was playing like 10 minutes before we got on the call. I'm the old dude. Like, I leave my mic on or off, and I have a little group of older people I play with, and I just started this summer letting my daughter play, and she's already better than I am, which is great. But yeah, they right now I like that. But old school and going back, I worked in Nintendo in the Mario, first Mario 1, heyday, Zelda, going back to a lot of those things. And I'll tell you a fun story. This actually leads to me and Scott doing the DJ thing. It's how I funded my part of the company when we started the DJ company. I worked at Nintendo, and we put on the Nintendo World Championships. And I spent a year on the road. I was making $10 an hour at Nintendo, working 80 hours a week. So that's like 40 hours, overtime. And I was on the road. So if you've ever been on a job where you're doing the road where they're paying you per diem and all this other stuff, I never cashed my paychecks. I mean, they direct deposited in. I never touched them. The per diem, as long as it covered our bar tab and like snacks for the plane, they fed us on the weekends. It was done like a rock and roll show. We had 18-wheelers. We had a crew. It was amazing. We'd roll into like basketball arenas around the country and put on this big show. And I literally would spend the week training to be an MC, to talk and play video games and talk. I had one of those headset mics like Garth Brooks uses, right? One of those Sonys. I actually have one, and I'd never used it at a gig. I had the little one, but the big fat one. And we get up there and we play video games and show people how to do all these little tricks. And when we did it in Seattle, we did it in the Kingdom. and that I came home from that and literally started this company with Scott, and that's what we funded it. But it also taught me how to talk on the microphone and talk on the microphone. And, you can't play video games at a wedding, but you can, but when things go, it taught me two main things. One, to listen to myself and to hear what you're saying, but also to be able to listen to someone else who's talking in your ear and being able to talk on the mic at the same time. So when, something's happening off to the side, but you're talking to the audience, sure, sometimes you got to say, hang on a sec, and then go over, but you should be able to do two things at once. So anyway, that's how video game started. Really kind of has ruled my life since then. So, but it was a good gig, man. I really like doing that.
Awesome. Well, this has been so great catching up and getting to do this and talking a little music and everything else. Thank you again. If people want to learn more about you and all your stuff, where would you have them check out?
Thank you, Reed. And thanks for doing this podcast, man. I think you've really put a lot of time and effort in this and had some amazing vendors and a good variety of them on there and representing. And I think that's something that you should be really proud of. And so thank you. My company is Affairs to Remember Entertainment, and it's djseattle.com.
That's a good one. It's a good, I think when you were on, I think the DJ one or whatever you were on, and I was looking up URLs and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good one. That's an old school DJ URL. Yeah.
I got it a long time ago, but it is good. When GoDaddy sends you that thing and says, here's how much your URLs are worth, I'm like, okay, I guess it was worth paying them all this years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again. If you're like Greg and you're interested in coming on the podcast, like I said, we've kind of, I don't know why, just had a resurgence right now. I have another one on Tuesday, tomorrow coming up, but a really great, I mean, we do them every week, but just a really great, like to have 4 in a row. Sometimes it's me trying to hustle kind of, week up. So if you're like Greg, you want to come on the podcast, bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. And that's a nice, easy questionnaire. Greg said, do I need to fill out anything to come on the podcast? And I said, you do not. You're good. But anybody else, you can go fill out the survey. Thank you again. And thank you so much. And hopefully we can see each other here at a wedding sometime soon.
Back to normal, hopefully. Thanks, Reed.
Awesome. Thank you so much.